Hey, it is the 5th of July today. I'm Shane Greenup, and this is my almost daily vlog podcasty thing, which is happening. Trying to practice looking at the camera thing, which is hard to do because it's like maintaining eye contact with a nodded eye, and apparently is good for, like, I've got to do my crowdfunding pitch video soon. So apparently this is an important thing to do, so I should practice it and get better at it. Because it's funny how, like, being aware of staring at something and trying to make that eye contact totally makes me, like, not be able to focus on the things that I'm trying to say. So that's fun. Anyway, just going to do a quick one today because I'm a little bit excited. I went to a meetup last night, but that's actually an aside. I'm excited because I'm thinking of I'm convinced to start doing a podcast, just interviewing people in the misinformation space, interviewing them, talking to them about what they're doing, and then just using it as an opportunity to create a channel that just keeps the information coming through for the listeners about misinformation, about the projects that are being worked on, about the work that people are doing, about upcoming events, opportunities in the space, so like grants, competitions, that sort of stuff. It's could be a really good opportunity to build something useful, which hopefully won't take up too much time. So my intention at the moment is just to it's just to capitalize on the work that I'm doing anyway. I'm reading all this stuff. I'm in all these different channels, so I'm taking in all this information. I just need to, take notes of it as it comes through, so that each episode I do, I can have like a news section where I tell everyone what's happening, and then as I'm talking, as I'm interviewing whoever the guest is, I'm taking notes, so that at the end of the episode I can post the video and audio with a summary of what was said to some extent, so people can just skim read the summaries if they want to see if they're interested in the episode. So I'm excited about that because I think it's needed in the space. No one's doing it. There's one other podcast in the space, The Disinformation Age, which is funny because the name I came up with is The Misinformation Age, and I don't know if it's because I knew The Disinformation Age already existed. I don't think so. Like, The Misinformation Age is kind of obvious one. I don't have a brackets around the mis. So they're obvious names, but I kind of forgot that the Disinformation Age was called that. So I don't know if I can really call my one The Misinformation Age when it's so close to the one that already exists. But that podcast is quite different. They're really focusing on sort of the intentional spreading of disinformation over Twitter. Like, I don't think they're entirely focused on that, but that's kind of what began it all. And they're looking at, because they have the creator of the podcast is working with someone else who's created technology that identifies bot behavior in Twitter, and so they're sort of tracking how bots on Twitter have influenced the discussion in Twitter. So they're focused on a very narrow part of the disinformation problem, which is different to the misinformation problem, which I think of as the background noise of misinformation and false beliefs, whereas disinformation is an intentional campaign by an entity with an outcome in mind. They're trying to affect something, whereas misinformation is just the chaos of false beliefs. So they're very different podcasts. And I think actually I think it's Mike Hind is the lead person on the podcast. He's who I follow on Twitter anyway. He might even be my second guest. The first guest that I've just emailed, and I'll see if they're interested, I don't know yet, is Dwight Nell, who is the organizer of Misinfocon. And part of the reason for having him first is he's an obvious hub of the community. Organizing Misinfocon, the most obvious sort of conference on the misinformation space, puts him in contact with everyone that's involved in it. So he is central to the community as a person, so a great first contact point. But also Misinfocon DC is coming up in August, so I don't know, like about a month away anyway. So it's a good opportunity for him to talk about that, what they're doing with it, what's going to happen, and so forth. So it's a good opportunity for him to promote the event, and a great person to talk to for the first episode. And then after that, like, I've got so many people that I'm talking to anyway that are working on projects or that I've talked to recently. So I've got no end of interviewees, just a matter of lining them up and getting their interest in talking about the subject matter and about their projects, and then just having the calls and recording it. It should be pretty straightforward. And the upshot of it all is, if it has any traction at all, if anyone cares and watches it, then it's an avenue through which, as I said before, I can sort of have news in it, and then also give me the opportunity to talk about what I'm doing with Socratic Web occasionally, particularly as I'm about to start the crowdfunding campaign. So it'd be good to have a viewership to the podcast, and I can say, hey, by the way, crowdfunding, go here to have a look, give me money, which I joke about. It seems to be like a massive psychological issue that I have to deal with, because asking for money seems to be really hard for me. Expecting to be paid seems to be hard for me, which is probably why I am constantly broke and don't have paid work, because I just do shit and seem to have the idealistic notion that doing shit because it's worth doing is what we should do, rather than doing shit because we get paid to do it, which I've never really liked. Anyway, that's what I'm excited about now. In the meantime, I'm actually I've paid the platform that I'm running my crowdfunding campaign on. They do a monthly course on how to do crowdfunding, and I've paid and joined that course because I'm doing crowdfunding and I seem to be struggling to execute it for whatever reason. I say psychologically more than anything. And so by doing the course, at least I'll have some structure pushing me along, and hopefully, I'm hoping to launch it before the course, because they want to launch it within 5 weeks, and I really wanted to launch this week, so I'm already behind schedule. But this way, if I've got someone pushing me to launch within 5 weeks, hopefully that is the latest date that we get to before I launch. So that way at least I've got a hard deadline of sorts. But if nothing else, hopefully I still launch before that, and I'm hoping that along the way, by going through their process, I will have feedback, and I'll learn little things, and I'll be able to craft my pitch a little bit better and have better insights than I would have if I was doing it by myself. Whether it'll make a difference, I don't know, but the key thing is just making sure it happens. So I'm doing that right now, working through their program and their worksheets and watching videos. They've got a Udemy course, stuff like that. So I'm working through that, talking to people, podcast. I went to FactMarta's launch of Briefer last night, which was very interesting. Great talking to a team of people that are working on the project, and I enjoyed offering some of my lessons from building Rebutta. They've still got a lot of stuff to learn, I think, in building in this space, because it's so easy to look at this and think, oh, we just build a plugin that does this, but the reality of building a plugin that annotates, that identifies URLs, that allows people to do things, it's always far more complicated than you expect. And I think the reality of it is because the internet is a Wild West frontier landscape of anything goes. There's no regularity. We try and come up with standards, and this, to some extent, we have those standards and they're helpful, but people aren't forced to obey standards, so lots of times it won't work, and lots of people don't know about certain standards, and just anything goes. And so systems which try and interact with the web as you surf it are just prone to so many problems and errors and bugs, and it's just a constant fight just to keep simple things working. And I say that because Rebutta was as simple as it gets. So very simple, and it was just a constant fight of bugs and issues. So this is another article that I've been thinking about writing, but I do want to write when I get the time to write again, because at the moment I'm basically forcing myself to not do anything but do the crowdfunding campaign. The podcast is the exception because, as sort of demonstrated here, talking is pretty easy for me. I don't have the same issues just brain dumping thoughts into words as I have writing. So the article I want to write is the power of simplicity when it comes to designing these things, because so many of the projects I see postulated anyway, and people say, oh, I've got this solution, I'm going to do this. They're too complex. There's too many moving parts. You're trying to do too much, and And maybe, it's describing the end vision and what you're hoping to achieve, but you really need to identify the tiniest, smallest, minimal viable product, the smallest moving part that you can create that works and does something before you get anywhere near that end vision, because this sort of cross-domain, cross-website technology that we need to invent to deal with this problem it's very hard to execute in a way which is going to work. I won't go into too much detail on that, but simplicity, you can't overestimate how important keeping things really, really, really simple is. So yeah. Anyway, so I will try and keep doing these videos as well, but the podcast videos will probably be like close to weekly. I'm not going to bother holding myself to like some definitive every Friday sort of thing. I'll try and organize at least one interview a week, maybe more than one a week, so that sometimes when it fails, you're not waiting more than 2 weeks to get a second interview. Whereas what I'm doing now will be daily. But what I'm getting to is I will create a new channel for the podcast. So I'll create an actual podcast channel. So these will still be my personal videos for me, but I don't expect anyone to watch. But might happen sometime. I don't know. Cool. That's what I'm working on now. So see you tomorrow.